So before we begin, I have to say something. I am not a doctor. I have no PhD, I have no degree. I cannot give you medical advice. I cannot tell you which medications you should and shouldn't try or be on or off. I cannot do any of that. Blah, blah, blah. This is just my personal opinion. This is what I have gone through. This is my story. And everybody's story is so specifically unique. And just because I have certain side effects or symptoms doesn't mean that you're going to have the exact same ones. Because everyone's situation is so unique. So with that being said, just remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a gal who's been through it. Hey guys, it's me! So if you don't know me, my name's Steph. This is my YouTube channel. I have made a couple other videos explaining some of the stuff that I've been through, which are quite unique circumstances, and I'm back at you with another unique circumstance. In the last video, I talked a bit about a final demon that I had to conquer, and that's what this video today is going to be about. So we're gonna get deep today, guys, if you know what I mean. What? So I have to start with a little bit of a backstory, so get out your popcorn, get your slippers on, and let's get down to it. Fuck. Anyways, I talked a bit about how I have faced a couple things, breast implant illness and living in a toxic moldy home. They really did a number on my health for several years of my life, and it was only in the past few years that I decided to come to terms with all this and actually face it. When I was a teenager, I had depression. This depression stemmed from all kinds of issues. We're not gonna get into that, but basically I went to the doctor, I told him that I was feeling sad, and he prescribed me an antidepressant and told me that things would get better. There's a lot more that goes into all of this, but this video is not about the antidepressant. This particular video is about a completely different type of medication. So there's a lot about antidepressants that we're not made aware of. There's a lot that doctors don't even learn. So one of those things is the insane amount of withdrawal effects that you can actually get when trying to get off these antidepressants. And this happens to millions and millions of people. So what had happened to me was, after years of being on antidepressants, I knew that it wasn't right for me, and I decided that I was going to wean off of the medication and get off it. That was my goal. I knew in my heart that it was something that I needed to accomplish. I wasn't feeling like myself on this medication, so I went back to my doctor. You know, mind you, this is years and years later, and I said, please, I want to get off this medication. He reluctantly decided to give me a taper schedule after trying to convince me that I did need this medication because my brain was broken. He then gave me a 3-month taper schedule, which is usually around the time frame that doctors give you for these kinds of things. I was on the highest dose of this antidepressant, and I tapered off over the course of 3 months. I now know that that was way too quickly of a taper, especially if you have a sensitive body, then it is definitely way too quick of a taper, but I didn't know that back then. So I began to taper off the medication. I was doing okay. You know, I had issues because I was still suffering with a lot of anxiety and panic attacks, but for the most part, my life was going well. So as I was getting off of these, you know, it was just, I felt kind of the same way that I did being on them. Sometimes I got really weird, like, physical sensations, but for the most part, I felt like I could handle it, and I was down to the end. I was about to finally jump off of this medication, and that's when shit hit the fan. So when I decided, okay, now, well, we're at the end here, time to get off, out of nowhere, I got hit with withdrawals from hell. At the time, I did not know that that's what this was, but I started suffering, to put it very lightly. It was the worst time in my life, and I thought that I was dying because, to be quite honest, that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like I was being tortured to death. So after a few days of rocking back and forth on the floor with endless panic attacks, I was basically begging for my parents to end my life for me because how horrible I felt. And we ended up going to Emerge. When I was in the room with the doctor, and I remember there were 2 nurses and a doctor, and the nurses told me that I needed to be on the antidepressant, and that's why I was reacting this way. The doctor agreed. He also told me that all these symptoms I was having was the flu. So he told me the emotional symptoms were because I actually needed this drug. Like, my brain required this drug to function, to be a human being. I required this drug. And at the same time, I had a very weird flu that never ended. Okay then. But I agreed to go back up onto half the dose that I was at. I still couldn't stop panicking, so they gave me a drug, and this is where it all starts, guys. They gave me a drug called Clonazepam. Clonazepam falls under the classification of drugs called Benzodiazepines. I'm not saying that your situation is going to be the same as mine. I'm not saying that you're going to react in the ways that I did, but I know I am one voice of millions of people out there who are actually suffering because of the long-term use of benzodiazepines, and that's why I'm making this video today. So I was prescribed these benzodiazepines. The particular one I was prescribed was called Clonazepam. They gave me a very high dose. They wanted me to take 4 of the pills a day. When I did that, yeah, my panic attack stopped. Also was knocked the out. So I didn't want to live the rest of my life sleeping. Or did I? Just kidding. Sorry. Anyways, I could not stay awake taking this medication. So it was essentially a tranquilizer. And it was very effective at calming me down, but it was almost too effective at calming me down. So I cut my dose down to half a pill in the morning and a whole one at night instead of 4 pills a day. And that is the dose that I remained on for the next 6 or 7 years. Throughout the next while of taking these drugs, I felt myself begin to dim. Mind you, I had a ton of other factors thrown in there with my breast implants and the mold and all that great stuff. No, but really, it did all make me who I am today, and I don't regret it. But I knew that this medication was really dulling me. I watched this drug take away my cognitive... Wow, can't even talk. See what I mean? I watched this drug take away a lot of my cognitive abilities, a lot of my memories. Over the years, I started to lose memories, short term. And people would remind me like, hey, remember the other day when we did this? And I would have absolutely no recollection of it. And that was scary. It's not like I would black out and do like things like murder people and then forget about it. But sorry, that's not funny. I just would lose chunks of my memory. And when I was reminded of it, I couldn't even believe that it was me because I literally could not remember it. So I started taking lots and lots of pictures, lots of videos over the years because this helped me remember things. I didn't tell a lot of people that's a big reason why I was doing that. I've always loved pictures and film and all that kind of stuff, so that really helped. But there were a lot of days where I spent time sitting down and watching old videos, going through pictures, trying to remember what had happened on that particular day. But I also made sure to only record the good memories. So it was something I had to hold on to on days when I was suffering. I could look back and know that life gets good and has happy moments. So I started doing that a lot, and it did really help, but I still felt this medication robbing me. For several years, I said to my new doctor, old one got retired, that I wanted to get off this medication. She did not object. Actually, at one point, she let me know that I should get off the medication because they are now finding that people who are on it for long-term use are more prone to developing Alzheimer's and dementia. So when she told me this, I actually wasn't shocked, and I agreed with her. I was like, yeah, like I have not felt the same since being on this medication. It's robbing me of the light within me. That's the only way I could explain it at the time. But I was too scared to face going off of the medication, so I often found an excuse as to why I wasn't ready yet. So when it came to getting off the medication, I was always, okay, yeah, like definitely, but I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. And before I knew it, 6 years had gone by of me saying, I'm not ready yet. And I got to the point where I was so fearful of this medication, but I was also so fearful of getting off this medication because of the withdrawal effects that I experienced trying to get off the Zoloft. I was so terrified that I would go back to that feeling. It was the worst feeling that I'd ever experienced. It was absolute torture for over a year before my brain actually kind of balanced out again and got itself back on track. So I was doing everything I could to avoid getting off this medication. I have questioned whether I've manifested other illnesses into my life in order to avoid getting off this medication. These drugs, they really mess with your system, and it was only until I decided to finally face the actual legitimate research on this medication that I realized it was responsible for so many downfalls and so many of my issues. So to put it quite simply, long-term use of a benzodiazepine is straight up dangerous. It's not good. I don't care who you are. Long-term use of a benzodiazepine is not good. So what I found out the rule of thumb is that the user should not be prescribed the benzodiazepine for more than 2 to 4 weeks. They have been prescribing me benzodiazepines for 6 to 7 years now. So why is it? Why is it that they are not supposed to be prescribing this medication for long-term use? Why is it that they're now saying that, oh hey, you might get dementia or Alzheimer's? Well, Mama did that research. And I'm not a mom, but I can be your mom. You want a mom? When you study about benzodiazepines, you quickly come to find out how they work. So what benzodiazepines do is they go into your brain and they act on your GABA receptors. So your GABA, G-A-B-A, receptors are responsible mainly for keeping you calm, but they actually account for up to 40% of your brain's activity in the neurotransmitters in your brain. So GABA can influence about 40% of the neurotransmitters inside of your head. So it's very responsible for a lot of things that go on within your brain. And when you take benzodiazepine for long-term use, what happens is it starts to damage your GABA receptors. So what happens is your GABA receptors are like, oh, we're no longer needed because you're being fed this synthetic form of GABA, and they downregulate and they won't accept any other form. They won't produce their own natural GABA, which is what our body's supposed to do. And your body relies on that medication in order to feel the way that the GABA in your brain is making you feel, whether it's being calm, having regular blood pressure and heart rate, even like your intestinal tract, your emotion control, all of that. There's so many things that your GABA actually can affect in your body. So after I decided to really face the things that my implants could be doing to me, I think that was my first step. I think it was my first step in order to waking up to the realities of this medication. I think that I had to face a couple hard things before that because they were going to prepare me for this hell, to be quite honest, that this medication has been putting me through, and the fact that I have to get off of the medication. So I knew that this meant something really scary to even kind of comprehend. I know my family and I have all felt like we've been cheated in some sort of way, because this medication, to put it quite frankly, has given me brain damage. So when I say brain damage, I mean that it's damaged part of my brain. But the cool thing is, the brain is miraculous. The body in general is miraculous. And I really believe in my brain and in my body and their ability to heal. And it is possible, it's very, very possible, to heal from all of this. You have to get off of the medication in a very, very safe way, and then you have to give your brain time to heal. And I am sure that mindset and a regular healthy lifestyle plays a big factor in all of this. And I know that having support also plays a huge factor. So one statistic that I found really unnerving is that around 4 million Americans alone, just Americans we're talking about here, 4 million have been prescribed a benzo for 5 to 10 years at some point in their life. That means that around 4 million Americans have suffered from benzodiazepine use for some period of time, because there's no way that you can take this medication long term and it not affect you in any way at all. What happens to a lot of people is you end up getting tolerance withdrawal, which means that your brain is requiring more of it because it's not enough anymore. It's the same deal as with other drugs, like you have to do more and more and more in order to get the same effect. So if you don't do more, then you start experiencing a little bit of, or a lot, depending on who you are, of withdrawal symptoms, because your brain's like, I need more of this. And I never gave into that voice telling me like, you need more, you need more, you need more. That's what it sounded like. Just didn't make sense. I never gave into it because I knew that straight up was not an option for me. So I got into yoga and meditation and all that woo 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 shit. And it really did help me. It saved me through a lot of the years struggling. And then I took out the other things in my life that were toxic, which was my breast implants, the mold, and certain people in my life. And I implemented a lot of self-care, and that's how I've gotten through the past 2 years of tolerance withdrawal. But for me, I know that there's going to be the question, well, what symptoms were the breast implants and what symptoms were the mold and what symptoms are the medication? Like, it's one thing after the other, like which is it? Well, that's a question I had to ask myself, and that's why I had to remove the implants and remove myself from the mold to see where I stood with this medication. So I can say after the removal of the breast implants and after leaving the moldy home, I definitely feel a lot better. I feel a lot more positive. My hormones are still at a balance, but they are a lot better than they were with the mold and with the breast implants. But the reality of it is I will never truly be able to properly detox my body if I'm still feeding it poison. the poison being the benzodiazepine that I'm taking. So it's the next thing that I have to face. I mean, I don't have to. I could keep ignoring it forever and just let it catch up with me, you know, down the road, and not only make myself suffer? Guys, I'm hungry. I could make myself suffer by ignoring it and make my family suffer by them having to deal with all the consequences of the long-term use of this medication, but I am not about to live that life anymore. So I looked at it in the eye. I looked it straight in the eye, looking at ya, and I said, bitch, you gots to go. So if you look into what GABA affects in your body, it can be so many different things. A lot of emotional aspects to it, a lot of memory, cognitive abilities, and then it gets into all the physical stuff as well. There's a lot of physical problems you can receive by not getting enough GABA. And when you go off of this medication, your body suffers, your brain suffers for a while because it has to repair those damaged GABA receptors. So, you know, if you've been on this medication for years, you have years worth of your GABA receptors being damaged, and they have to go back to normal. And unfortunately, there is no other drug or magical thing out there that is gonna make it better for you except you. No one can get you through this except yourself, and you have to come to terms with that. And at first it can be terrifying and scary and lonely, and honestly it just downright pissed me off. I felt like I was tricked into being like a slave to this medication for so many years of my life, and I wondered, what would my life be like if I had never been dragged down by this medication? What would my life be like if I did not now have to go through a year and a half of withdrawing off of this medication? What are the things that I could accomplish? What are the things that I could do? And I would drive myself nuts. And then I realized, stop asking yourself all these what ifs. What if? Would I be doing this or that, or living my dreams? And well, why not do it now to the best of my ability? And so that's what I've started to do. I stopped sitting on the sidelines and letting this medication take control of my life, and I decided to get in that game and start kicking ass and working towards my dreams as much as I could possibly do, all while honoring the fact that my body has been hurt, my brain has been damaged, and I need to heal. So that's where I'm at. See ya. I eliminated the things that were toxic to me, and then I got myself in a safe space to live, and now here I am, ready to face slowly getting off my medication. So the reason why, as I mentioned, it's going to take me a year and a half, give or take, is because with these drugs, they are so dangerous to withdraw off of. I cannot even express enough and abundantly enough how dangerous it can be to go off of this medication. You need to do it extremely slow, like 1,000 times slower than what your doctor would recommend, because unfortunately, doctors aren't taught often, at least they're not often taught about the severe withdrawal effects that many people end up experiencing going off this medication. So there are many support groups out there. There are many credible websites and resources that you can look at and you can join in order to gather the proper information, which I have done, obviously. Research nerd. I'm not saying to go against what your doctor tells you to do, but it never hurts to go a little safer than what your doctor tells you. Like, there's nothing wrong with being extra cautious and extra safe. So in the benzo world, there's a lot of fear and pain, to the highest extent, a lot of fear and pain. And you'll come across a lot of people who are suffering endlessly and are struggling to get off the medication, or are stuck on the medication, or try to get off the medication. And unfortunately, some people end up taking their lives. And this is what bugs me so much, is that people are suffering in this way without knowing that they can do this, they can get through this. There are so many people that believe that it's impossible and feel stuck, just like I did for all those years. And it's actually truly liberating to come to terms with facing getting off of the drug and then deciding that I'm going to get off of it no matter what. Like, I'm going to get off this drug. It's just gonna take some time. I think that the benzo world needs more of a positive voice in it. There are positive voices, don't get me wrong, and I'm so grateful for those people because they have given me the hope that I need. But I want to also be one of those people, and I want to share my journey slowly going off of this medication. Everyone's different. I could feel minimal withdrawal symptoms, like maybe I'll be nauseous some days, maybe my head will feel weird, or I could suffer the entire year and a half. The scary thing is not knowing, but the fact is that if you're always sitting there questioning it, you'll never actually go forward and take the step to just jump off that fucking cliff and go for it. You know, I decided that no matter how I land or how this happens, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And that involves living my dreams in the meantime. I'm not putting my dreams on hold anymore. So I started taking courses in cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm also building a website and a blog. And I'm going to be taking on clients in the near future to help them through these feelings of panic and anxiety and depression and help them get over these hurdles in their life. Like, I know not everyone has gone through breast implant illness or mold illness or is necessarily stuck on a benzodiazepine. Maybe you are, and that's great because we'll have so much in common and I can help you that way. But I know that there are a lot of things that people go through that trigger these emotions and put us in like an endless cycle of suffering. And I want to help people get out of that victim mode and bring them into their true power, because that's what I feel like I've been doing lately. You know, ever since a couple years ago when I decided to remove the breast implants, I started taking my power back. And I want to coach people through doing that themselves, because I think it's really important that we get out of these cycles and we bloom in the ways that we're meant to, no matter what's holding us back. So even though I still feel like I have this wall up from this medication, it's slowly coming down. I'm micro-tapering every single day, and I know that the closer I get, the more free I feel, and I know that I might suffer at some point, but I know that in the end, it's all gonna work out. I'm gonna feel better than I ever have, because that's what happens to the people who are successful in getting off these drugs. And I can't wait to shine and help you shine and feel like you are stepping into your true power, because there is nothing more liberating than that. There is nothing better than that feeling of being like, hey, what's the worst that could happen? And then realizing that the worst, it's okay if it happens, because you can get through it. So anyways, that's all I got for today. I hope that this video was all right. If anyone has any questions about benzodiazepines, please let me know. I'd love to answer your questions. I want to be as clear as possible on what is going on and what can go on with your body. I'm going to link a bunch of resources below, a bunch of published studies proving the effects of the medication, that you can do the research yourself if you'd like. And in the meantime, I want you guys to not let whatever weights you feel like you have dragging you down, like, you can actually take those weights off now. I know that with a diagnosis or with something that it seems like you can't change right away, it feels like you'll never be able to get away with it, but just because it's not going to change overnight doesn't mean that it's never going to change. It really all comes down to this. Even if you have brain damage, you can rewire that. You can rewire your mind and your brain. And I think that's friggin' incredible. So Round of applause, please.